Are you ready to improve your English, gain confidence, and transform your life? Whether you're just starting your journey or looking to take your skills to the next level, you've come to the right place. On this channel, we'll explore the best tips, practical advice, and fun ways to learn English that are easy to follow and effective. From grammar and vocabulary to listening and speaking, I'll be sharing lessons that help you speak English fluently and confidently. But it's more than just language learning here. This channel is about motivation, pushing past challenges, and believing in yourself. Together, we'll create a supportive community where we can all grow and improve, because learning a new language is a journey, and you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button, and let's unlock the world of English together. Your journey starts now. Chapter 1. The Beginning. I was 25 years old, living in a small town in Mexico. Every day, I worked as a receptionist at a local hotel. My job allowed me to interact with many international guests, and while I loved hearing their stories, I often felt a deep sense of frustration. They spoke English so effortlessly, and I wished I could join in their conversations. I dreamed of traveling the world, exploring new cultures, and connecting with people from different backgrounds. One evening, after a long day at work, I decided that enough was enough. I took out my notebook, a pen, and made a commitment. I would learn English. Chapter 2. Setting Goals. I sat down and wrote down my goals. I wanted to be able to introduce myself confidently, hold simple conversations, and eventually read English novels. To make these dreams a reality, I decided to dedicate at least 1 hour every day to studying English. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I began with the basics, the alphabet, simple phrases, and vocabulary. I created flashcards with words and their meanings, practicing every night before bed. It was challenging, but I was determined. Chapter 3. Overcoming Challenges. The first few weeks were tough. I struggled with pronunciation and grammar rules that seemed complicated. Sometimes I felt overwhelmed and wondered if I was making any progress at all. I recall one particular day when a group of English-speaking tourists checked into the hotel. I could hear them laughing and enjoying each other's company, and it made me feel small. But then, a friendly tourist noticed my frustration. He smiled and said, "Don't give up. Learning a language takes time, and everyone learns at their own pace." His words struck a chord with me and reignited my motivation to keep going. Chapter 4. Finding Resources. Determined to improve, I began exploring various resources. I discovered online videos and podcasts that catered to English learners. I listened to simple stories and repeated sentences out loud, practicing my pronunciation. One day, I stumbled upon a local language exchange group. Nervously, I attended my first meeting, where I met Sarah, a kind teacher who offered to help me. We instantly connected, and I felt relieved to find someone willing to support my learning journey. Chapter 5. Practice Makes Perfect. During our sessions, I practiced speaking and listening more than ever. Sarah introduced me to different topics, travel, food, and culture, and encouraged me to express my thoughts. I learned to ask questions and engage in conversations. With each session, my confidence grew. Sarah also suggested I listen to English songs. At first, I struggled with the lyrics, but soon I found myself singing along, which greatly improved my pronunciation and rhythm. Chapter 6. Immersing in the language. To immerse myself in the language further, I started watching English movies with subtitles. I chose romantic comedies and adventure films, enjoying the stories while picking up new vocabulary. After a few weeks, I began to understand dialogues without needing subtitles. It was a thrilling feeling. I also followed English-speaking influencers on social media. Watching their content gave me insights into everyday conversations and colloquialisms, making me feel more connected to the language. Chapter 7. The first test. After 6 months of hard work and dedication, I felt ready to test my skills in a real-world setting. I decided to apply for a position at a larger hotel that catered to international guests. I worked on my resume, ensuring it was polished and in English. I practiced answering common interview questions with Sarah until I felt confident. On the day of the interview, I was a bundle of nerves, but also excited. I reminded myself of how far I had come, and that this was just another step on my journey. Chapter 8. Facing fears. During the interview, I stumbled over a few words, and my heart raced. But I pushed through, sharing my passion for travel and my commitment to learning. I remember the interviewer smiling at me and complimenting my progress. That small gesture made all the difference. A few days later, I received the call. I got the job. It was a significant milestone in my journey, one I had dreamed about for so long. Chapter 9. Continuous learning. Starting my new job introduced me to even more English speakers. I seized every opportunity to practice. During breaks, I chatted with colleagues, asking them questions about their cultures and experiences. They were impressed with my progress and offered tips for improvement. I enrolled in an online course focused on business English, which proved invaluable in my new role. I found myself using English more naturally, and each conversation made me feel more at home in the language. Chapter 10. Celebrating achievements. 1 year into my journey, I decided to celebrate my progress. I organized a small gathering with family and friends, sharing my story and my achievements. I spoke in English about my experiences, the challenges I faced, and the support I received from my friends. It felt incredible to inspire others, and my loved ones beamed with pride as they listened to me speak a language I once struggled with. Chapter 11. The Travel Dream. With my newfound skills, I booked my first trip abroad. I decided to visit Canada, where I would reconnect with Sarah. I was nervous about speaking English in real-life situations, but also excited to explore a new country. Sarah welcomed me with open arms. We explored the city together, visiting famous landmarks and trying local cuisine. I practiced ordering food in English, and each successful interaction boosted my confidence. Chapter 12. Reflecting on growth. During my trip, I took time to reflect on how far I had come. I thought back to the shy, uncertain person I once was. Now, I was engaging in conversations, making friends, and navigating a foreign city. I felt grateful for the support I had received from my family, Sarah, and everyone who believed in me. I knew that my journey didn't end here. I wanted to continue learning and exploring. Chapter 13. Giving back. Inspired by my experiences, I decided to give back to my community. I started volunteering to teach English to children in my town. I organized weekend classes, where I shared my story and encouraged them to believe in themselves. Watching the kids learn and grow brought me immense joy, and I realized that teaching was another way to continue my own learning journey. Each time I saw a child grasp a new concept, I felt fulfilled. Chapter 14. New Horizons. With each class, my passion for the language deepened. I began to explore advanced topics like English literature and cultural nuances. I set new goals: to read classic English novels, travel to more English-speaking countries, and even consider a career in international business. Each day, I practiced a little more, never losing sight of my dreams. I learned that consistency was key, and I embraced every moment of learning. Chapter 15. The Challenge of Fluency. As I progressed, I realized that fluency was not just about knowing words. It was about thinking in English. I started to challenge myself by narrating my daily activities in English. I would describe my morning routine, the meals I prepared, and even my feelings throughout the day. This practice transformed my thought process and helped me articulate my ideas more clearly. Chapter 16. The Power of Community. I also found an online community of English learners. We exchanged tips, shared resources, and supported one another. I joined virtual book clubs where we discussed novels in English. The sense of camaraderie motivated me even more. I made friends from different countries, each with their own unique stories and experiences, enriching my understanding of the language and culture. Chapter 17. Overcoming Plateaus. Despite my progress, there were times when I hit a plateau. My learning felt slow, and I grew frustrated. I remember one afternoon sitting on my bed, feeling defeated, but I recalled the encouragement I had received from the kind tourist and the supportive friends I had made. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that learning a language is a journey with ups and downs. I decided to change my approach, exploring new methods to reignite my passion. Chapter 18. Embracing Mistakes. I began to embrace my mistakes as learning opportunities. I practiced speaking English with friends without worrying about errors. I joined a local Toastmasters club to improve my public speaking skills. Each time I spoke in front of a group, my confidence grew. I learned to appreciate the process and understand that making mistakes was a natural part of learning. Chapter 19. The Call for Adventure. With my improved skills, I felt a call for adventure. I planned a trip to England to experience the culture firsthand. I was excited yet anxious about navigating the country on my own. I practiced common phrases I might need and familiarized myself with the local customs. When the day arrived, I packed my bags and boarded the plane, ready for a new chapter in my journey. Chapter 20. The Adventure Begins. In England, I explored bustling cities and quaint villages. I visited historical landmarks, tried traditional foods, and practiced speaking with locals. Each interaction was a chance to apply what I had learned. I faced challenges, like understanding different accents, but I remained determined. The experience taught me to adapt and be open-minded, essential skills for any traveler. Chapter 21. A New Passion. During my travels, I developed a passion for writing. I began to document my experiences in English, capturing my thoughts and feelings. Writing became a creative outlet, and I found joy in expressing myself through words. I started a blog to share my journey with others, inspiring fellow learners and connecting with readers worldwide. Chapter 22. A New Perspective in England. The first morning I woke up in England, the sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of my small hotel room in London. I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness stirring in my chest. This was the beginning of my solo adventure, something I had been working towards for years. I took a deep breath, got ready, and headed downstairs for breakfast. The hotel had a cozy little cafe on the ground floor, where I found a table near the window. As I sat down, I noticed the hustle and bustle outside, people walking briskly, the red double-decker buses passing by, and the subtle murmur of morning conversations. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, came to take my order. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" she asked in a delightful British accent. I hesitated for a second, but quickly reminded myself that I was here to practice. "I'll have a traditional English breakfast, please," I said, smiling back. "Lovely choice. Would you like tea or coffee with that?" "Tea, please," I replied confidently, happy with the small success of speaking naturally. She left, and I glanced out the window, taking in the beauty of the city. As I waited for my food, I pulled out my notebook, the same one I had used when I first started learning English. I had filled it with notes over the years, vocabulary, grammar rules, expressions I found difficult to pronounce. I smiled at the pages, remembering the long nights I had spent scribbling in them. Today I was far from that beginner version of myself, and yet I knew there was still so much to learn. When my breakfast arrived, I took my time to savor every bite. The crispy bacon, soft eggs, grilled tomatoes, and black pudding, all paired with a cup of warm tea. As I ate, I overheard conversations around me. There were two men at the next table discussing business, their accents thick and formal, but I could understand most of what they were saying. It felt like a small victory, realizing how much progress I had made. After breakfast, I grabbed my backpack and set out to explore the city. My first stop was the Tower of London. As I stood outside the towering stone walls, I couldn't help but marvel at the history. I had read about this place in my English textbooks, but seeing it in person was surreal. I decided to join a guided tour, thinking it would be a good opportunity to listen to a native speaker. The tour guide, a young woman with a passion for history, welcomed the group. "Welcome, everyone. I hope you're ready to dive into over 1,000 years of history," she began. Her voice was clear, and her enthusiasm was infectious. I followed her closely, hanging on to every word as she described the history of the tower, from its beginnings as a royal palace to its dark days as a prison. At one point, she asked the group a question. "Does anyone know the name of the first prisoner held in the tower?" No one raised their hand. I thought back to my studies, and hesitantly, I lifted mine. "Yes," she said, pointing at me. "Ranulph Flambard," I answered, feeling a bit nervous. She smiled. "Correct. Ranulph Flambard, the Bishop of Durham, was indeed the first prisoner here. Well done." I couldn't help but beam with pride. It was a small moment, but it felt huge to me. Being able to contribute in a conversation like that, surrounded by English speakers, was something I had only dreamed of when I first started learning. As the tour continued, I found myself lost in thought. The city around me buzzed with life, and yet I felt deeply connected to the moment. My journey with English had brought me here, to a place where I could comfortably converse, explore, and truly enjoy another culture. It was a reminder of how much could change with time, effort, and persistence. Chapter 23. Deepening Friendships. Later that evening, I decided to meet up with Sarah. She had moved to the UK a few years ago and was now living in a quaint village just outside of London. We had kept in touch regularly, but I hadn't seen her in person since I had left Mexico. As I took the train to her village, I felt a rush of excitement. Sarah had been such a pivotal part of my English learning journey, and I couldn't wait to tell her all about my adventures so far. When I arrived at the station, Sarah was waiting for me, waving with a big smile on her face. She looked just as I remembered, warm and friendly, with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Bienvenida," she called out, mixing a bit of Spanish with her English greeting. I laughed and ran over to hug her. "It's so good to see you again," I said, feeling a sense of comfort in her presence. We spent the rest of the evening catching up at a cozy pub near her house. Over plates of fish and chips, we talked about everything: my travels, her life in the UK, and our shared memories from our language exchange days. "You've come so far," Sarah said at one point, her eyes shining with pride. "I knew from the moment we met that you had the drive to master English, but seeing you now, living your dream, it's truly inspiring." Her words warmed my heart. I couldn't have reached this point without her guidance and support, and I made sure to tell her that. We spent hours reminiscing about the past, laughing about my early struggles with pronunciation, and celebrating the progress I had made. The night felt magical, like a full-circle moment. Here I was, speaking English fluently with someone who had been there at the very beginning of my journey. It was a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of having a strong support system. Chapter 24. New Challenges in a Foreign Land. The next few days in England were filled with new experiences and, of course, new challenges. One morning, I decided to visit a local farmer's market. It was a charming place, full of stalls selling fresh produce, baked goods, and handmade crafts. As I walked through the bustling aisles, I overheard vendors chatting with customers, their accents ranging from the soft lilt of the countryside to the sharper tones of the city. I stopped at a stall selling pastries, the aroma of freshly baked bread drawing me in. The vendor, an older man with a kind face, greeted me. "Morning, love. What can I get for you?" he asked in a thick accent that was slightly harder to understand. I hesitated for a moment, trying to process his words. My brain scrambled to adapt to the unfamiliar sounds, but I managed to smile and point to a croissant. "I'll take one of these, please," I said, handing over a few coins. He nodded and handed me the pastry. "Lovely choice. Enjoy your day." As I walked away, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Even after all my progress, there were still moments like this, moments where the language barrier felt daunting. But I reminded myself that this was part of the journey. Every conversation, every new accent, was an opportunity to grow and learn. Chapter 25. New Friends, New Perspectives. After a week in London, I felt more comfortable navigating the city. The mornings had become a ritual, a strong cup of tea, followed by a walk through the streets of the bustling metropolis. Every corner seemed to have a history, a story waiting to be told. But while I enjoyed my solo explorations, I missed the kind of deep conversations and friendships that made travel truly meaningful. I had always believed that part of learning a new language was connecting with people, understanding their culture through their eyes. One afternoon, I decided to take a break from sightseeing and join a language exchange group. It was hosted at a small cafe in Shoreditch, a trendy area filled with street art, vintage shops, and a quirky vibe. As I walked in, I immediately felt the warmth of the space. People were chatting, laughing, exchanging stories, and learning from one another. I smiled, feeling that familiar excitement of being surrounded by others who shared my passion for language. A woman with short, curly hair came up to me, smiling brightly. "Hi, you must be new. I'm Emily, one of the organizers. Are you here to practice English?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm here to practice English, but I'd love to meet others who are learning as well." "Fantastic," she said, guiding me to a table where a small group was seated. "We've got people from all over the world. I'm sure you'll fit right in." I took a seat and introduced myself to the group. There was Lisa, a fashion student from Italy, Kareem, a software engineer from Egypt, and Maria, an aspiring chef from Spain. As we started talking, I could feel my confidence growing with each word. The conversation flowed easily, and before long, we were laughing and sharing stories about our respective cultures. "So, what brought you to England?" Lisa asked, sipping her coffee. I paused for a moment, thinking about how far I had come. I've always dreamed of traveling and improving my English. But more than that, I wanted to challenge myself, to see if I could really thrive in a place so different from home. Kareem nodded. "That's brave. It's not easy to step out of your comfort zone like that." "I agree," Maria added. "I moved to London for the culinary scene, but I struggled so much at first. It's not just about the language. It's everything. The culture, the way people think, even the smallest things like grocery shopping feel different." As they shared their experiences, I realized how universal our struggles were. We were all facing similar challenges, learning not just a language but a way of life. And yet, here we were, sitting together, overcoming those hurdles one step at a time. Later that evening, as we said our goodbyes, Lisa turned to me with a smile. "We're having a dinner party at my place this weekend. You should come. It'll be a mix of cultures, food, and lots of fun." I hesitated for a second, unsure if I was ready for such an intimate gathering. But then I remembered why I was here, to connect, to grow, and to experience life fully. "I'd love to," I said, smiling back. Chapter 26. A Cultural Feast. That Saturday, I arrived at Lisa's flat, holding a bottle of wine as a small gift. Her place was exactly how I imagined it would be, bright, colorful, and full of life. The living room was filled with people chatting in different languages, a mix of accents blending together into a harmonious hum. It felt like a true international gathering, a melting pot of cultures. "Welcome." Lisa greeted me at the door, taking the wine. "You're just in time. The food's almost ready, and we're about to start the feast." She led me to the kitchen, where Maria and Kareem were already preparing dishes from their home countries. The smell of spices filled the air, paprika, saffron, garlic, and it made my stomach rumble in anticipation. "I'm making paella," Maria said proudly, stirring a large pan filled with rice, seafood, and vegetables. It's a traditional Spanish dish. I used to make it with my grandmother when I was little. And I've got some falafel and hummus, Karim added, pointing to the table where several plates of Middle Eastern food were laid out. It's a simple dish, but it reminds me of home. Lisa was preparing a pasta dish, her Italian roots evident in the fresh ingredients she was using: basil, tomatoes, olive oil, and parmesan. As we cooked together, I felt an overwhelming sense of connection. Each dish told a story, not just of the ingredients, but of the people who made them. It was as if we were sharing pieces of our identities through the food. When everything was ready, we all gathered around the table, our plates piled high with a mix of cuisines. As I took my first bite of the paella, the flavors burst in my mouth, rich and vibrant, much like the conversation around me. "I've never tried anything like this before," I said, turning to Maria. "It's incredible." She smiled. "I'm glad you like it. Food has a way of bringing people together, don't you think?" Karim nodded in agreement. "It's the same with language. We may come from different places, but the moment we share food or conversation, those differences seem to melt away. As the night went on, we shared more than just food. We exchanged stories about our families, our dreams, and the challenges we had faced since moving to England. I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't expected, talking about my journey with English, the struggles, the small victories, and the moments of doubt. "I never imagined I'd be here," I admitted at one point. "When I first started learning English, it felt impossible. But now, sitting here with all of you, I realize how far I've come." "That's the beauty of it," Lisa said, raising her glass. "We've all come so far, and we're still growing, still learning. Cheers to that." "Cheers!" we all echoed, clinking our glasses together in celebration. Chapter 27. Reflection and Growth. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of calm. The dinner party had been more than just a social event. It had been a moment of reflection, a chance to see how much I had grown. As I sat by the window of my hotel room, sipping tea, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Learning English had been one of the most challenging experiences of my life, but it had also been the most rewarding. It wasn't just about mastering a language. It was about understanding different perspectives, building connections, and embracing the unknown. And though I still had much to learn, I felt confident that I could continue growing, no matter where the journey took me next. I grabbed my notebook again, the one that had been with me through every step of this process. Flipping to a fresh page, I started writing. This is only the beginning. Every challenge, every setback, has brought me closer to where I am now. I may not know what the future holds, but I'm ready for it. And as I continue this adventure, I will always remember the power of language, the way it brings us together, the way it helps us understand ourselves and the world around us. As I wrote, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for everyone who had been part of my journey. Sarah, my language partners, my new friends in England, they had all played a role in shaping who I was, and I knew that the connections I had made would stay with me forever. Chapter 28. Embracing the Journey. With so much progress made, the journey toward mastering English had shifted in unexpected ways. What began as a desire to communicate and understand soon transformed into a deeper appreciation for the language and what it represented. Every word, every sentence now carried weight, not just in terms of meaning, but in the ability to connect with people, express thoughts more clearly, and experience the world in a broader sense. There were new routines that had become part of daily life. Mornings no longer started with just breakfast or a daily task list. They began with listening to a new podcast, an audiobook, or watching an interview in English. While eating, there was always a notepad nearby to jot down unfamiliar words or phrases, with time spent later looking up meanings and practicing their use. This habit, small as it seemed, became a cornerstone of learning, layering the brain with new language skills day after day. Then came a realization. Learning English was not just about memorizing rules or expanding vocabulary. It was about immersion, about living in the language. Instead of translating thoughts from the native tongue into English, the thought process began to occur directly in English. It was a subtle but powerful shift that allowed for greater spontaneity in conversations, quicker responses, and deeper engagement in discussions. This realization sparked a decision to dive even deeper into the language through cultural experiences. English wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a gateway to understanding the histories, cultures, and perspectives of people around the world. There was a deep dive into English literature, from classic novels to modern fiction, each book offering a new way of thinking, a different lens through which to view life. From Jane Austen's romantic portrayals of 19th-century England to the thrilling mysteries of Agatha Christie, every book was a journey within itself, broadening horizons and enhancing understanding. However, as the passion for the language grew, so did the challenges. Every now and then, complex grammar structures and idiomatic expressions created confusion. There were moments of doubt, where the mind would stumble over tricky phrases or misunderstandings in conversations. Frustration brewed when there was a struggle to keep up with fast-paced dialogues in films or live discussions. Despite the hurdles, the fire to push through these challenges remained. There was one evening that encapsulated this perfectly. After finishing a long day, a quiet evening was planned, sitting down with a cup of tea and watching a new English drama series. Halfway through the first episode, it became evident that the dialogues were far faster than usual, with slang and cultural references that weren't immediately familiar. It was tempting to turn it off, to fall back on the comfort of subtitles or slower-paced content. But something pushed through that moment of hesitation. The decision was made to stick with it, to accept that the first time wouldn't be perfect. Slowly, scene by scene, the meaning behind the rapid dialogue started to unfold. Words that were unclear at first started to make sense within context, and by the end of the episode, there was a deep sense of achievement. Learning to embrace these challenges became the key to continued growth. Instead of focusing solely on what wasn't understood, there was now an appreciation for every small victory, whether it was catching the meaning of a difficult phrase or successfully engaging in a tricky conversation. Each hurdle was no longer a setback, but a learning moment, a chance to refine skills and push forward. With this new mindset came even greater goals. The dream of not just learning the language, but using it to make a difference in the world began to take shape. It wasn't enough to simply understand or communicate anymore. There was a desire to use English as a bridge, to connect people, share ideas, and inspire others who were on their own journeys of self-improvement. That's when the idea of starting a YouTube channel was born. The idea had been floating around for a while, a platform to share this journey, to teach others what had been learned, and to create a space where people could gather to improve together. But it took time to gather the courage to turn that idea into reality. After all, it meant putting everything out there for the world to see, including the imperfections. But then came a realization. The imperfections were exactly what made the journey worth sharing. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing that it's okay to struggle, to make mistakes, and to keep pushing forward anyway. There was a deep belief that sharing these experiences could help others overcome their own fears and challenges. The first video was simple, a short introduction, explaining the motivation behind the channel and a few tips for English learners. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic, and that's what mattered. To the surprise of the creator, the video resonated with people. Comments started flooding in from learners all over the world, sharing their own stories, their struggles, and their gratitude for the encouragement. This response sparked a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Weekly videos became a staple, each one focused on different aspects of learning English. Grammar tips, vocabulary lessons, listening exercises, and most importantly, motivational talks to keep viewers engaged and inspired. The goal wasn't just to teach English. It was to build a community, to create a space where learners could feel supported and understood. The success of the channel grew faster than expected. Messages poured in from viewers who had started to see improvements in their own language skills. They thanked the creator for breaking down difficult concepts and making learning enjoyable. But what was even more rewarding were the stories of personal transformation. People who had gained confidence, applied for jobs they once feared they weren't qualified for, or simply found joy in understanding their favorite English songs or TV shows. This success story wasn't just about learning English anymore. It was about realizing that with enough passion, perseverance, and belief in oneself, any goal could be achieved. English was just the beginning. The language had opened doors to new opportunities, new friendships, and new dreams. But more importantly, it had shown that growth and learning were continuous, lifelong processes. And so, the journey continued, not just in mastering English, but in exploring all the other possibilities life had to offer. With every new lesson, challenge, and success, there was a renewed sense of purpose and a deep understanding that the greatest achievements often come from the hardest struggles. The future was wide open, and it was time to embrace it fully.